Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the course of communication skills. This is lecture number 18 and today we will study that how we can make and deliver an oral presentation. I am Muhammad Asif Khan, lecturer, Department of English, Ohio University of Science and Technology. Dear students, now let us look at the agenda of today's discussion. In this lecture, we will look at that how should we plan, prepare, practice, perform, and in the end, what type of questions we should expect from the audience and how we should reply those questions. So, in today's lecture, we will first of all look at how we should plan an oral presentation and what is the necessary groundwork or preparation for oral presentation and what are the necessary steps which we should take care of during preparing slides. Along with that, I will also tell you the importance of practice before actually enacting an oral presentation. And subsequently we will study the enactment or performance of an oral presentation. It will be followed by the questions that we expect from the audience. How should we reply those questions? After that, the most important part, as the introduction of an oral presentation is the most important part, in the same way, the end or the part in which we say thanks to our audience, that is also an important part, and I will suggest you one formal and informal way of closing the presentation. So starting from the review of the last lecture in which I have defined an oral presentation, and we studied that oral presentation is the process of expressing information or ideas, thoughts, and different views that presenter has, but the medium which he uses to express the information and the ideas is by words of mouth. So we can say that an oral presentation is a speech or a vocal performance that is accompanied by some visual aids on which that presentation is based. Now we will first of all look at the first important part of making an oral presentation, and that is that we should plan our oral presentation. And in this planning, the most crucial part of planning is that first of all, presenter needs to analyze the audience. And for this very common phrase being used by most of the teachers and most of the presenters is that know your audience. So it is very important that prior to the meeting or the event, the presenter should find out the level of knowledge the audience has on the topic for the discussion. That is the key for presenting the right oral presentation to the audience. Another step is that you should get familiar with the room layout where you have to present your presentation, and after that I will suggest you that you should prepare your introduction for the presentation after analyzing the audience. When you will know your audience, you will be in a better position to prepare your introduction for the presentation, because it is the most important part. So you should prepare introduction in such a way that your audience, they start believing you and they consider this very thing, that you are the best person who can give information on the topic under the discussion. The more audience trust you, the more they listen. So it is very important if you will give them the reason for your talk and you successfully tell your audience, why are you here and why are they here? So these two questions are very important. If you successfully handle these two questions, that why are you here, Why are you the best person who can give information on the topic under the discussion? And why they are here to listen the presentation you are delivering. Another important thing is that when you are presenting your presentation, your introduction should include your name, your job position, or the reason you are an expert on your topic. As I told you earlier, that you should prepare your introduction in such a way that audience start trusting you. So the steps are that you tell them your name, your job and position, and the reason you are the expert on the topic. That will develop that confidence in them that they expect the right information from you. The next step in the planning is that you should have clear objectives. For that, find out the purpose of your presentation, why you are delivering this presentation. For this, decide appropriate points of emphasis, at what are the key points you are discussing. After that, you build up a useful level of details for every key point. That will help you in expanding your presentation. For this, you should understand the circumstances of the audience, that what is the need of the audience sitting in that very hall, in that very place where you are presenting yourself. So clear objectives are a very important aspect of planning. Another crucial thing is that you should think about the items you are going to include in your presentation. And when you decide that very thing, then you start gathering information. So gather and study as much as information as possible about your topic. After that, you have to arrange that very information. So you have to put in order detailed notes on some of the ideas you may want to use during your presentation. In planning, one another important feature is that you should decide the time and duration of your presentation. Better presentations convey their message in less time because they focus on the message. So it is very necessary that you decide your talking time. For this, you find out how long it takes to deliver your material. So you should plan the time and duration of your presentation. That is another key aspect of planning. When you are planning, you should structure your presentation like a story. Compose your presentation well connected like a story. You should arrange the things in your presentation that they appear well connected. So for this, do not include any item in the presentation that appears random, that appears arbitrary, as if something is haphazard, and unsystematically you are including other things, and it seems accidental that you added that very thing in the presentation. If you will develop the things in a sequence, that will make your presentation appear like a story and it will appeal the audience. Another important aspect of planning is that you should keep your presentation concise, and from concise I mean brief, short, to the point. Instead of including long details, you should focus on the terseness of your presentation. For this, important thing is avoid repetition. If you are providing your listeners the material that is new for them, you can expect that they will listen to you. But if you are repeatedly presenting the same thing, then you can expect the factor of boredom in your audience. So again, I will repeat that you should develop your presentation in such a way that connect your audience. Presentation should be composed, well connected, and it should relate to the audience to whom you are delivering that very presentation. Now we will move towards the groundwork or the preparation of an oral presentation. So as I told you in the last slides, that most important thing is to have clear objectives, and you should gather the relevant information and decide the time duration for your presentation. Now it comes to the preparation, that you should outline your material and decide a detailed and precise time period for each and every slide. Here I will give you a journal outline of a presentation. As I told you in the last lecture, that an oral presentation has an introduction, body, and conclusion. In the same way, you can divide your presentation and outline the things in the following order. That is the title of your presentation. Then you should give the justification of your presentation, that why you are delivering this presentation. It will include that what is the need of this presentation, and the second thing is that why you are the best person to deliver this presentation. Then comes the methodology, that what way you are using to communicate the ideas to the audience. As I suggested you one way, that is that you compose your presentation like a story. That is one way. Then comes the main part of your oral presentation, and that is the discussion which you have to do. And in the end, you have to conclude the results. And finally, you have to present the summary, that this was the title, and we discussed the main points about our topic. And finally, that is the conclusion or the summary of the whole discussion. So that is a journal outline of an oral presentation. When you are preparing the slides, that is another very essential part of designing or making of the oral presentation. So you should use minimum text and the numbers and facts in your presentation. Use images and graphics so that the audience directly get the main crux of the subject you are describing to them. And we see that mostly audience they get connected to the images and graphics. One thing that we should keep in our mind is that we should avoid distracting backgrounds and such type of things on the screen which distract the attention of the listeners or the audience. Instead of that, we should design our presentation in such a way that the audience just focus on the things you want to convey to them. For that reason, you use the colors to highlight the text so that they focus on the things where you want to make them focus. And the most important aspect is that you have to maintain the interest of the audience in that oral presentation. For that, whatever things you include, that is okay with your groundwork. In preparation, proofreading is very important and crucial, because we are often ignoring the things which are very important in our presentations, and the careless behavior in which you are blind to your own errors and mistakes, sometimes it results in the collapse of your oral presentation. So I will suggest you that it is very necessary to proofread your presentation, and you should check out the grammar mistakes, and you should focus on the poor layout of the sentences and the paragraphs, and avoid poorly constructed sentences, the incorrect punctuation. And the most crucial mistake is that we often see spellings and typing errors. So that is very necessary to avoid all these mistakes. So you should proofread and check out all the list which I have provided, and even you can include some other points in this list to make your presentation much better than the ordinary one. So that is very important, that you make your presentation free from all such type of errors. After proofreading, you should prepare notes. Notes does not mean the full script. I mean that you should simply write down the key phrases or the headlines in the bullet form and make sure that your notes are easy to read. When you are performing your presentation at that time, you can easily read the material which you have jotted down in the form of bullets. So prepare the notes so that it becomes easy for you to deliver your presentation. Now comes the significant part of the making of oral presentation, and that is the practice. As we are well aware of the idiom that practice makes a man perfect, the same is applicable to the oral presentation, that we should rehearse our presentation multiple times. And in this way, we will transform the nervous energy into enthusiasm. And another key for the success in this practice part is that you should attend the others' presentation and deduce outcomes for yourself, and you should look at what type of mistakes they are making and how can you avoid those mistakes. So practice is key for successful presentation, and you should also go for rehearsals before actual presentation or enactment of your oral presentation. When you will rehearse your presentation, you will again see a number of errors or unnecessary material in your presentation. Then you have the time to delete that unnecessary material. And another important aspect in the practicing of oral presentation is that you should get feedback. There are two types of feedbacks. One is that you get the feedback from your friends who are listening to your rehearsal presentation, and the second feedback is that when you originally deliver your presentation, and at that time you get the feedback from the audience sitting there in that presentation, and you use those observations being made during that presentation in the next practice session. When you are re-rehearsing your presentation, you should use the outcomes of that feedback. So modes of capturing feedback is that when you are delivering your practice oral presentation, or even you are doing your real oral presentation, you should observe the non-verbal feedback or the signals of the audience during your presentation, that what type of feelings they are having and what type of non-verbal communication they are doing. Then you should focus on the questions during the presentation. That also suggests you that what level of interest audience were having while you were delivering your presentation. So you can also utilize other channels to get the feedback of the audience, and I'm not going into that detail, but it is very necessary that you should get feedback and try to correct yourself in the coming oral presentations. Now comes the actual part of the delivery of oral presentation. That is the performance session or the presentation section. On the day of your oral presentation, you should arrive earlier and adjust to your surroundings. You should meet and greet with the people who are there. That will give you a positive energy. So use positive visualization and remember that very thing, that most of the audience sitting in that hall or that place, they are sympathetic. They want your presentation to be a successful presentation. They are there to listen to your presentation. So you should get the positive energy from there. And when you are sitting there, you should focus on relaxing. And the significant way of getting relaxed is that you should breathe. Sit up or stand erect, not relaxed. I'm not saying that you get relaxed there, but you sit up or stand erect, but at that time breathe and release your tension. Move your muscles and don't lock your body. That will help you before starting your presentation, because you will be there and you will arrive there earlier and get adjust to your surroundings, have a good chit chat with the audience there. That will give you a positive energy. So get relaxed before delivering your oral presentation. While you are presenting your oral presentation, you should speak with confidence. And for that, I will suggest you that you get comfortable with your material and prepare the material yourself and rehearse that very thing. Then you will be comfortable with your material. So present your ideas loudly and clearly. Speaking loud and clear is the basic necessity of an oral presentation. You should use simple language, and while delivering your speech, use variations in pitch, variations in tone, and the variations in your volume according to the situation. So these are some of the suggestions regarding your confidence and your speaking. One another thing is that, as I told you, that you should decide the time period for each and every slide, and managing your time is another important aspect of oral presentation. If the thing which you are presenting is not matching the time which is being allotted to you in the whole session, then the organizers will again and again remind you about the time you are taking, and it will push your presentation towards the failure. So manage your time during your presentation. From the very beginning, you should capture the attention of the audience. So there are 3 hooks to start a presentation and quickly make an impact on the audience. That is, tell a story, ask rhetorical questions, and use quotations. These 3 hooks are very significant in hooking and in capturing the audience attention. So when you get the attention of your audience, you can very easily win their trust, and then you will be very comfortable in conveying your actual message. Keep eye contact with your audience. That will again be helpful in capturing the audience attention, and they will believe that you are a confident person. So don't worry about the reaction of your audience. I want to guarantee you that every individual reacts differently when he is trying to understand the ideas that are coming to him. So mark the most important points in your discussion or in your presentation and explain those main points of the presentation to their full, so that the audience get the full understanding of the topic and the subject you are presenting in that presentation. Then comes the conclusion of an oral presentation. As I told you, that in the main body, we see that you have to present the main points, and the most important thing is that you should explain each and every point to its full, so that the audience get the full understanding of the subject and the topic. So then comes the conclusion of an oral presentation, and we see that this very part is also one of the vital and significant parts of the oral presentations. Generally, we see that audience remember the beginning of the presentation and ending of an oral presentation more clearly. Though the most significant part is the body of that very talk, but the things which are generally that audience keep in their mind is the beginning, when the presenter capture their attention, and in the end we see that that part is the crucial part, and audience often remember that very part. So therefore it is very important that we should present the summary of all the main points in the end of the presentation, and that will create a lasting impression in the minds of the audience. After the summary and the conclusion of the oral presentations, then comes the question answer session, that I also named here as a doubt session, where audience they clarify the doubts that arise in their mind. So for that, there are two strategies. The first one is that the presenter should make guesswork when he is preparing his presentation, and he should guess the expected questions. And when he guesses those questions, he should well prepare the replies for these questions. During the presentation, we see that what type of strategy he should adopt to make better replies to the questions being raised by the audience. The first is that you should repeat the question to the audience. The reason is that when you will repeat the question, all the audience will get connected to that very question. And the second thing is that it will provide you time to think about the reply of that question. I will tell you one another thing. If you don't have the answer, you should directly say no to that question. Instead of giving them wrong answer, you should clearly tell them that you don't have the answer for this question. One important strategy is that you ask the same question from the audience, that if anyone in the audience have the answer for that question, that will create a very, very good discussion among the audience. So in this session, you should try to clear the doubts of the audience. And again, after this question answer session, you should summarize all the outcomes we find in that discussion. And then comes the official ending of oral presentation, and that is the part in which the presenter says thank you to the audience. So I will suggest you that you should say thank you with smiling face. There are two ways to say thank you at the end of your presentation. The one is formal way, in which you can say that thank you for being here today. I really appreciate that you took the time to be here and listen to my presentation. That is a more formal manner to say thank you. And the other way is that you just continue your discussion, and in the end you very quickly end your presentation by saying thanks for listening, and you end up your presentation and just move out. So the same thing is that here I am going to end my today's presentation on how to make an oral presentation and how to perform or enact that oral presentation in the real situation. So thank you very much for listening passionately. Allah Hafiz, see you in the next lecture.